So is there nothing good in my life? Can I afford this life? I don't want to live like everyone else. Yes, Faith, you will waste your life. I don't live life, I live for my goals. I am above and they are below. Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Valeria, and in this video, I would like to talk to you about narcissism. I have been working towards this video for 3 years. 3 years of working with a psychologist. And here's the result. I believe that everyone should watch this video because, as my psychologist says, and I agree with him, narcissism is a problem of the modern world. And further, I will explain what I mean and why this is exactly the case. I would like to start with the definition of narcissism so there won't be haters in the comments saying narcissism is a disorder and so on, okay? Let's figure out what narcissism is. Narcissism is a personality trait or disorder characterized by an excessive focus on oneself, a need for admiration and attention, as well as an underestimation of feelings towards other people. The definition states that it is a personality trait or disorder. And you know, if we imagine narcissism as a scale where one side is the disorder and the other side is the healthy form, then somewhere in the middle lies the unhealthy form of narcissism. And now I will tell you how these forms differ from each other. You have probably heard the expression healthy narcissism. And it really does exist. Each of us has narcissistic personality traits. But in each of us, they manifest differently. Narcissism can work for us or it can work against us. Healthy narcissism is precisely manifested in self-respect and self-confidence. Healthy narcissism is the pursuit of one's goals while respecting other people. It's about accepting criticism, being able to perceive it and work with it. And healthy narcissism is about empathy and respect for people. That is, I love myself, but I treat other people with respect. In other words, I don't feel better at the expense of other people by thinking that other people are worse. I am just like other people. I respect other people, but at the same time, I primarily listen to myself. Healthy narcissism works for you when you truly believe in yourself, you pursue your goals, but at the same time, you understand what limitations might exist and you take them into account. And as you understand, healthy narcissism is an ideal picture. And in fact, you can strive for it and get closer to it. And next, I will tell you in more detail how to do this. So let's recall our scale. On one side, we have healthy narcissism, and on the other side, we have the disorder. And let me say a few words about it as well. Only a doctor can make a diagnosis. But if we talk about narcissistic personality disorder, it has its own criteria according to the DSM. I will display them on the screen. I will not read them out to you. Take a look at them. And for a diagnosis to be made, the patient must meet 5 or more criteria. Match. If you look at these criteria, don't immediately think you have a narcissistic disorder. If you truly feel that something is wrong with you, that the criteria seem accurate, then it's worth consulting a doctor. Narcissistic disorder is a very serious diagnosis, so please be cautious with this. But in this video, I would like to talk not about the extremes, but about the middle ground, an unhealthy form of narcissism. What is it? It might be easiest for me to talk about this by providing some signs and examples from my own life so you can understand whether you have it or not. So that you can try to find yourself in these examples, and maybe you'll say, oh, this is not about me at all, so most likely you are a healthy person and don't need to treat anything. Or maybe it will be the opposite. So, the signs of an unhealthy form of narcissism. Sometimes this is also called narcissistic injury, but I'm not sure if it's the same thing. Such people usually have the same signs, the same symptoms. In this case, I will refer to it as an unhealthy form of narcissism. And I will try to describe the signs to you and share my experience of how it was in my life. And I want to start with the most important, the biggest sign that has always manifested with me everywhere. It's the feeling of worthlessness and the feeling of grandiosity. Honestly, I didn't notice it. I resisted for a long time, thinking I didn't have it. I thought I had depressive episodes until a psychologist laid it out for me. During the sessions, I often said that I live on an emotional roller coaster. One moment, and I'm in a pit. Then I'm on a high, then I'm in a pit, then I'm on a high. And she thought, well, just some depressive episodes until she saw this whole picture over the course of 3 years. So, this picture is very similar to grandiosity when I'm on a high and worthlessness when I feel like the worst person in the world. I lived in these waves. When I was on a high, I felt better than other people. I felt like I was the best, the most special person on earth. There was no one else cooler, better, or greater. And then something would happen. I would see someone who was better than me. Something would occur that would hit me with reality. I would just fall into a pit and I would start thinking that I am the worst person on earth. How could I even have been born? That I am worthy of nothing, that I have achieved nothing, that I can do nothing. I devalued everything, devalued all my achievements. I hated my life. I found no joy in anything. Like, even the brightest moment, which seemed bright to me 5 minutes ago, all the positive things faded in my life. And with such swings, I constantly lived, all these signs. They are interconnected and influence each other and greatly affect this very state. For example, one of such signs is the constant need for admiration and validation of one's worth. A person with unhealthy narcissism constantly tries to make an impression, to hear some kind words, so that someone says something nice to them, and then they melt. They will feel like the best again because they were told kind words. This praise, this approval makes a person, feel significant. And it is very important for them to hold on to these warm words because at that moment they suppress the feeling of their own worthlessness. That is, these words lift them up this hill. Up to a certain point, they have this grandiosity rises. They start to feel special. And they like it, they enjoy it. This feeling, because below awaits worthlessness, and they will fall back into that pit again. And they need to hold on as much as possible up there, in this state of feeling special. And this, by the way, is the second sign. A person with an unhealthy form of narcissism feels special. They feel that they have a special life. They feel that their life is not like others, that the universe loves them specifically, that the universe will help them specifically, that everything is different for them. Honestly, I don't even know how to explain it. I'm explaining it to you using my own examples. And here I am, even feeling a bit nervous, because this is truly a part of my life. It's just that now it manifests less and less. But when it was clear and clearly manifested, now I see it, I see how it was. I felt that my life was completely different. I constantly told my psychologist, I don't want to live like everyone else. My life is different, my life is special. Well, it was very important to me. And then she once told me that the goal of therapy is to be equal among equals. And somehow that hurt me. The first time I heard it, I didn't want to hear it. I wanted to be special. And this feeling of being special, as I already mentioned, fills the sense of emptiness. It doesn't matter what happened yesterday. It doesn't matter what goals I achieved. It doesn't matter where I traveled. It doesn't matter what I accomplished. And this happens because in an unhealthy way, a person tends to devalue everything they have achieved when they fall into this pit. This is one of the signs of how it manifests. I constantly devalued everything. As I said, I lived like this, like on a swing. And when I hit rock bottom, I felt an incredible emptiness. I felt that I had achieved nothing in life, that I deserved nothing, that I would die under a bridge, and that this was my fate. That the universe doesn't love me, that I have a hard life, while others have a good life. Mine is hard, and that's what I deserve. I'm worth nothing. I'm useless. I'm terrible, unattractive, a bad worker. I listed everything. I'm a bad girlfriend, a bad friend. I devalued everything. I was just at rock bottom and felt worthless. Truly, this feeling of worthlessness, that's exactly how I felt. A person with an unhealthy form of narcissism has problems with self-esteem. Well, how else could it be when we're constantly on a roller coaster? A person may appear very confident from the outside, but inside they may feel their own, as I already mentioned, worthlessness. And again, self-esteem greatly depends on these swings. When a person is on top, they feel that they are great, that they are confident, they have a great body, they have a great life. Then, when the person hits rock bottom, this confidence disappears. A person with unhealthy narcissism finds it difficult to assert personal boundaries. And this is also quite a logical point. When there are problems with self-esteem, when there are problems with self-confidence, when such desires arise to manipulate or gain some respect, it manifests precisely in the form of not feeling what I want. I cannot express myself how I want, and therefore I allow my boundaries to be violated. And of course, one of the points is the difficulty in accepting mistakes, in accepting criticism, because at the peak of this grandiosity, I am special, I am the best, I cannot have mistakes, my life is perfect. This perfection, this perfect image, it collapses because mistakes appear, criticism appears, which means my life is not perfect, which means something is going wrong, which means everything is bad. So, does that mean my life is terrible? Does that mean there's nothing good in my life? Does that mean everything I said was cool is actually not cool? In reality, I'm nobody, I'm worthless. That's what I told myself, and that's how I rode the emotional roller coaster. I have just given you some signs in which you might find yourself and assess whether you have some unhealthy form or not. But of course, it's better to discuss this with a specialist. And those were very specific examples. Now, I will explain more theoretically how it works and how it manifests in more high-level aspects. And again, I will give my own examples. If you have an unhealthy form of narcissism, you ride on emotional swings. Or you can even do the opposite. Evaluate your life. Do you ride on emotional swings between grandiosity and worthlessness? If so, you most likely have an unhealthy form of narcissism. Emotional swings. At the top, I am the best. At the bottom, I am the worst. How did this manifest in me? When I think about emotional swings, I immediately recall this example. I took a taxi many times. And when I rode a taxi around Moscow, I thought, my God, how I love this life. What a wonderful life. I can afford everything. I'm truly special. I live in an expensive city. I can afford this life. I can afford to take taxis and do it often. And those little people walking around the city on foot by metro, all of that is not for me. So that's what I was thinking. And then my narcissism just rises, reaching its peak. But then the next day I run out of money and I take the metro. Yesterday my grandiosity was right here. I'm cool, I take taxis. And now I'm going down to the metro. How is that possible? So I'm not worthy of taking a taxi, so I haven't achieved anything, so I haven't done anything to be able to take taxis all the time. Now I'm just like all these people going to the metro. My life is terrible. My life is just worthless. This happened in just one day. And that's how my emotional state was jumping around, because when I was taking a taxi, everything was just igniting, everything was rising to some incredible scales. And then when I returned to ordinary life, then when I returned to how I usually lived, I usually took the subway and I took a taxi a few times a month when I was tired, or for some special occasions or events. I faced reality and reality was overwhelming me. This is just one example. I had plenty of such examples. For instance, when I got a raise, I thought, that's it, I'm a great employee. In general, I felt like I could achieve anything. I'm super. And then I would see how one of my acquaintances or just some girl on Instagram writes, I earned 1 million in one day. Of course, my self-esteem and everything about me would drop because, well, who am I? Here I got a 5,000 raise and there's a girl. She's amazing. She earned 1 million. And there were many such examples in my life when, just like that, a pleasant voice would whisper something to me, and then after some time it could come quickly, or it could take a long time to arrive. In fact, the episodes are not always the same. It could be very good for a long time then. It was very bad for a long time. And yes, by the way, this is very important from a theoretical point of view. When we overdo it in one area, there will inevitably be hypercompensation in another area. I mentioned grandiosity and insignificance. A person with an unhealthy form of narcissism constantly oscillates between, I am worthless, yes, I am the best. A person with an unhealthy form of narcissism is constantly pursuing perfectionism. When everything has to be perfect, sometimes it's good when he can overcome this perfectionism and start doing something, but very often in attempts to find this perfect moment. A person constantly postpones and ends up not starting anything at all because the perfect moment will never come. That's how it works again. In my mind, I create the perfect picture. Now I will do everything great, everything perfectly. I will set up the shot. I will shoot the video. I will edit it wonderfully. And then something doesn't work out, or the sound didn't record, or there's some error in general, even a minor roughness. And I start to refuse to record the video because it's not perfect. It doesn't turn out perfectly. I will postpone it for later. This fear of making a mistake, the fear of not doing it, as it was in my head, it also drags me down. At first, I think everything will be super. I will shoot a great video. And then everything is not perfect for me. Then later, even here, there is this grandeur, insignificance. A person with an unhealthy form of narcissism strives for external attributes like status, some branded clothing, money. Showing what expensive vacation I'm currently on, all of this enhances the sense of significance here. There might be two options. On one hand, a person overcomes this perfectionism, starts doing something, begins to achieve success, earns a lot of money, gains recognition, status, But no matter how hard he strives for something, he does not feel internal satisfaction. As a rule, he feels an inner emptiness. That is, his standards are constantly rising, constantly increasing, and he constantly feels that he is not enough, that he is not doing enough. A person's standard of living may actually improve, but he will not feel the internal sense of having achieved something, of having succeeded, of being proud of himself. For a while, he will be pleased with what he has achieved, but then an inner emptiness, devaluation. A standstill will set in, and that's it. And again, we sink to the bottom and go nowhere. This is one path. This is actually a positive path, but there is a more negative path, where a person is constantly in this devaluation and idealization. Right now, he's in a slump. Then it seems like his motivation rises. I start doing something. I set up the frame, start recording a video. Then everything doesn't work out. Everything isn't perfect. And he quits again, starts blaming himself again, devalues, and it goes in circles like this. There can be two options, maybe even a positive one, but it still doesn't bring happiness. That is, external attributes, it would seem, once I achieve, once I reach, once I have 1,000,000 rubles, then I will definitely start living. Right now, it's not life. And this feeling that once I achieve, then it will be good is very misleading, because this bar will always keep rising. And it will never fill the sense of emptiness until we start working on this narcissism. Let me say a few words about where the unhealthy form of narcissism comes from. And first, of course, is the influence of upbringing, the influence of our significant adults and how relationships with them were formed in childhood. With a high probability, if the parents also have some kind of narcissistic trauma or disorder, the child, with a high probability, this can also arise. If we do not consider the situation where the parents have some issues with narcissism, then the emotional instability of the parents can play a role here, and some dependencies that the parents had. If we also discard these factors, then what remains is how your parents treated you. Excessive praise or insufficient praise. Ignoring the child's needs for respect and recognition. All of this can create a dependency on external approval. And then gradually this ball of yarn gathers. Personal factors, social factors. We all observe social networks. And we all see how others are constantly becoming better and better. And of course, we constantly compare ourselves. We constantly look at other people's lives and try to build our own lives even better. And all of this comes together and results in such an unhealthy setup in our system. And as I already mentioned, you might say, well, actually, I do have good moods, I do things, I achieve something, I feel special, I am moving towards my goals, that this voice, on the contrary, works in my favor. And in fact, this pleasant whispering voice, you are the best. You can be more, the most special, you will achieve everything you want, you just need to desire this voice. It is really very pleasant, it whispers very nicely and you want to believe it, and indeed you immediately want to live. I don't know how to explain it. You immediately come alive. When you hear a pleasant voice, one you want to believe, but this voice is deceptive and you need to learn to resist it. Because if we don't do this, narcissism will work against us. And you know, for the past 6 months, we have been actively working on this topic with my psychologist. I couldn't get rid of this voice. I couldn't resist it. And I constantly had some arguments for my psychologist about why this is good, why it's great to hear this voice, why it's great to feel special. I didn't want to acknowledge the fact that I am equal among equals. I wanted to feel special. I had active resistance. I couldn't do anything about it. It took 6 months, indeed, 6 months. I was on this emotional roller coaster. I felt bad. And when I felt bad, I would say, everything is fine. I will listen to you. I will do as you say. And then again. And so it went through several iterations until during another depressive episode. I didn't tell my psychologist about the depression. I feel bad when in this grandiose state. I feel good, but it's not clear what to take. Somehow here I am. Feel bad about myself. And I have, the feeling that from constantly riding this roller coaster, I will waste my life in this constant self-flagellation and unstable state. The main thing is that when this grandeur was passing in the pit, I did nothing. In the pit, I felt terrible. I tell the psychologist, I think I'm going to ruin this life in this way. And she told me, yes, Lara, you will ruin your life in this way. Well, because until you start resisting this voice. And it really hit me like a slap in the face. And then I started working on it myself. The journey was long, but I came to it. And now I want to give you a few examples of why an unhealthy form of narcissism or narcissistic trauma works against us. This video is super tedious. It's already been going on for an hour. I don't know how long it will be in the end, but I want to fully explore this topic. I want to tell you why narcissism works against us and why from it. Why from this voice, this pleasant feeling of grandiosity, you need to run away as soon as possible. First of all, as I already mentioned, it's perfectionism. The constant desire to do everything perfectly and this procrastination. Or for example, when you do something, but you do too little. When you could do more, all of this pushes you away from your goal. As someone who loves setting goals and loves working towards them, this point really invigorated me. And that's exactly why I've been running this channel for a year. Although I could have abandoned it, I could have said everything is not perfect, I don't like anything, there are many things I don't like. Believe me, there are many things I would like to change and many things I would like to do better, but I am alone. I work alone, I do what I like. I primarily focus on the process, not the end goal. And now, when I enjoy the process, I love this process, it's much easier for me to let go of the perfect picture because I choose, first of all, what I like and I do it. And here, the power of a small step works very well. I do a little bit at a time. I gradually improve. Little by little, I strive towards my ideal picture in my head, but that doesn't stop me from doing it because I don't have that perfectionism and desire to make it perfect. I would rather do it somehow. For me, this is a rule. I would rather do it at a 6 out of 10, but I will do it. I would rather go to a workout and do it somehow, even if it's not beneficial, than sit on the couch. And I have this attitude towards many things, and many things have started to work out for me because of this, because I let go of the desire to do it perfectly. Because I repeat once again, if you want to achieve your goals, while you are waiting for the perfect picture, someone else will have already reached that goal, not perfectly. Your goals are simply being pushed back. I don't know how else to explain it. The next point is the feeling of one's own insignificance. No matter how pleasantly that voice tells you that you will succeed, there will always be a feeling of insignificance. If you want to live a balanced, healthy, happy life, to be able to defend your boundaries and not fall into these very difficult, for me, they were difficult pits, then simply refuse that sweet voice. Believe me, if you hear this pleasant voice now and do not resist it, if you are currently riding this wave of grandiosity, thinking you are the most special, believe me, in any case, I am telling you 100%, you will descend into a feeling of insignificance one way or another. Either the universe will do it for you, someone else will do it for you, or you will do it to yourself, to your own mind. You will bring yourself to such a state. And again, if you are a goal-oriented person, your motivation will be like this. In the pit, you will most likely refuse projects that might bring you money because you will feel that you are not approaching the project well enough. And in general, a person in the pit often refuses certain opportunities because they feel inadequate. The next point is the inability to accept reality. This is also related to how you will move through life if you cannot accept failure. If for you, failure equals being the worst person, it will greatly hinder you from some of your dreams, from simply enjoying life on this earth. And the last point I would like to mention is the inability to enjoy the process. For me, this was probably the biggest one. Because up until a certain point, I didn't even understand the cartoon soul. I mean, I thought there was some obvious meaning that you need to enjoy the process. But I didn't really grasp it. I only realized it recently, just a few months ago, during one session. I thought, really, I am like that man from the cartoon who takes actions just to reach his goal. I am not living life. I live for my goals. Every minute in my head is occupied. I need to do something just to achieve my goal. Have I ever asked myself what I want, what I like? No, I didn't care about that. I have goals, I must only pursue them. I didn't ask myself what I want to engage in, but what process do I enjoy? And what is the meaning of life then if you don't enjoy the process itself in this life, if you live only for the goals? And I realized that I don't want to live my life like that. I'm young, I still have so much ahead of me. And I want to remember these days. I want to enjoy these days. They live in a constant race for some possibly even unrealistic goals, because narcissists have unrealistic ones. I showed you the goals, when narcissism works against us, and why we need to urgently work on this. To give up all the pleasant perks that the protection of narcissism gives us. Let me now tell you when narcissism works for us and why it's great. In fact, a person with healthy narcissism accepts their circumstances. As I mentioned earlier, but I'll repeat, the person does not devalue anything. They take joy in their achievements. They can appreciate them properly and can value themselves properly. Healthy narcissism is a direct path to ambitious goals because our standards are realistic, because we can approach them, we can see them. You know, this is a super cool example. It was a game changer in my life. I was telling my psychologist, I want an apartment in Moscow, in the center, something special. I was describing it to her and I said, I can't buy it. And I really don't know what to do about it. Then I don't feel like living at all. My life isn't very good without this apartment. And what's the point of life if I can't buy the apartment I want? How did I set such a high bar for myself? Not only to buy an apartment, but an apartment in the center, a big one. I just described everything to her. And she, regarding my unrealistic goals that I set for myself, she gave me an example. There was a person who moved to another city with nothing. Then he found a job. Then he bought an apartment and started a family. He bought a small apartment on the outskirts of the city, very modest. Then he saved money, sold something somewhere, bought a second apartment with a mortgage, and had already paid off the first one. The second apartment was also small, very far from the center, very simple. And in this way, the person acted, and at the moment, the person had 4 or 5 apartments in the city. And it seems just insane how someone can have 5 apartments. And this is exactly how it manifested in me. I set myself a big goal right away, which I couldn't achieve. Now, I didn't set myself any small intermediate goal. I had this kind of maximalism, either my big goal or nothing. I won't buy myself a small apartment in Anshibe. I don't need it. Either something cool, immediately good, or nothing. Her example really inspired me. Because I always thought that I wouldn't achieve anything, because at the moment I can't achieve it. Until she showed me that the path to our goals unfolds gradually. My big goal, this apartment, is far away and the path is very dark. And right now it's even unknown to me. That is, I'm heading to this apartment without a map in the car. And to get there, I need some reference points. That is, I can't just drive there, 5,000 kilometers without stopping. I need some reference points. What if I set a simpler goal for myself, but keep in mind that someday I will reach my big goal? Not to give up on that big goal, but also to accept that I might not achieve it someday. As I already mentioned, a person with healthy narcissism accepts their flaws and accepts their own. Some cool, strong points. And a person with healthy narcissism knows how to set healthy goals. And I had this thing, I want to live by this. By my big goal, I want to move towards it. Everything else is meh. Everything else is not great. I was living by this big goal, and that's not a healthy form of narcissism. This imaginary, currently unattainable apartment of mine is not a healthy goal. A healthy formulation would be that I am ready to live life. It doesn't matter. If I achieve this goal or not, I will gradually move towards it. But I can accept that this goal may never be in my life. And you know, in one of the coaching sessions for mentors, I heard from a mentor that to truly reach your boldest goals, you need to accept that you may never achieve them. Because once you accept this, your level of responsibility decreases. And you just start your journey, just begin moving towards it. And you start enjoying the process, you begin to live life, and you truly start doing. Because that perfectionism and the desire to break everything but achieve it is no longer there. And perhaps I don't know how psychological or healthy this position is, but partly there is a grain of truth in it. Being able to agree that I won't get something, that my goal won't be realized. It's bold, but it's worth it, and possibly. When healthy narcissism works for us, we start treating people better. as I already mentioned, the position of an equal among equals. I have repeated this several times throughout the video. And here I will also give my example from one of the jobs when I worked as a business assistant in one of the companies. We had couriers and sales department managers. And at that moment, I felt as if I was above them, as if I was really performing important tasks. While they were doing some unimportant routine work, I am a normal, adequate person. I communicate with people normally. I treated my colleagues normally. Well, that is in the usual. In life, it didn't manifest at all. It was precisely on some internal level. It was my self-perception that I was above and they were below. Of course, there are certain grades. Of course, there are certain positions at work where there is indeed a boss and subordinates. But in everyday life, there is a person, and on the same line, there is another person, meaning everyone is equal. You know, years later, when I told this story to a psychologist, I looked at it from another perspective and realized that this was a manifestation of narcissism exactly like that at that moment. It manifested in me. And also, by the way, I remembered another example of interaction with a supervisor. This is precisely a reference to the feeling of one's own uniqueness. Once I outlined some idea, I was confident in it. I just knew that it was a good idea. I explained it to her and said, let's implement it. To which she asked me some questions. That is, she didn't accept the idea immediately, but started to analyze it somehow. And probably that's normal. It's logical. But I reacted very categorically. She wrote, well, if you think we shouldn't, let's just not do anything at all. Firstly, she is my supervisor, so I completely disregarded the hierarchy, but I didn't care because internally I felt super special. I felt that it was a super idea, and in my head I was thinking, why on earth are you telling me anything now? You and I know better in this field, and that's why we should go with my idea. You're asking me questions here. You're putting into doubt what I'm proposing, then I won't do anything anymore. And this sense of being special, even with my supervisor, I say in interaction, I behaved incorrectly due to this sense of specialness. Of course, in healthy narcissism, we become more emotionally resilient because we can accept criticism, we know how to set boundaries, we know how to say no, we know how to listen to ourselves. That is, first and foremost, we always choose ourselves. But at the same time, we respect the feelings of others, and that is also very important. We become more resilient to criticism, to external circumstances, because we know how to accept the situation, we know how to work with it. We are not looking for a perfect scenario, we simply live life. Before I tell you how to transition from an unhealthy form of narcissism to a healthy one, I would like to mention what obstacles might arise on your path and why. I have worked with narcissism for so long. And in general, it is difficult to work with narcissism and get rid of it. Firstly, it's the habit of seeking external recognition, meaning it's much easier to manipulate somehow, take certain actions and receive. This is that positive reinforcement. You receive it in the moment and then continue living your life. Your grandiosity has risen, and what happens tomorrow doesn't matter. And it's much harder to start valuing yourself for your own achievements and stop devaluing them. This is significant work with a specialist, and I highly recommend it to you. And here I also wanted to add that it's very difficult to get rid of external attributes. We are attached to our external things like money, brands, status, and so on. And this very well reinforces and makes us hold on to these important things. And that's why it's very difficult to get rid of narcissism in the next moment. If you remove this grandiosity, what remains is emptiness and a sense of worthlessness, and you need to work with this feeling. And of course, our psyche protects us and doesn't want us to fall into some terrible state. It would rather take us on emotional waves than once. To dive in, start digging into ourselves, start studying ourselves, start learning, defending ourselves, our values, working on ourselves. No, it's very difficult. Sometimes it's better to use the stick, sometimes the carrot. And of course, we must mention that alluring voice and the idealized images we have created for ourselves. These images, this voice, they are very enchanting. They do a lot. All to ensure that we don't fight narcissism, so that we ride these emotional roller coasters. And this false sense of success. The false feeling that I am at the top, that I can do anything, I will achieve everything. It's very hard to get rid of this feeling. It's very pleasant. But if you do find yourself in these situations, signs. If you have slightly realized that, yes, you have this and it bothers you, then let's talk about the steps, about how to transition to a healthy form. And The first point is, of course, the awareness of the problem for a reason. I provided a large number of signs for a reason. I gave my examples because all examples are very similar for everyone. It has its own mechanisms. It has how they manifest. It's just that for different people at different levels, it works slightly differently. But overall, the process and the signs are the same. Therefore, the first thing to do is to recognize the problem. Understand, find yourself in this, and realize that you have it. And of course, ideally, if you have realized this, go to a psychologist and discuss it with them. This is the best solution because I can't imagine how to fight narcissism on your own. It requires some kind of willpower, an incredible sense of awareness, and a readiness to work on it. Until I was ready, I resisted it very strongly. And then only when I consciously realized internally that I wanted to overcome this problem, only then did I start working on it. And after about 3 to 4 months of conscious effort, I understand that it hurts me. I don't want it this way, but some of my defense mechanisms trigger resistance, and so on. And I'm still in this state. And then, after about 3 months of such active work, everything changed. By the way, this was done together with a psychologist. It's also very important to understand that as long as this mechanism exists, you will feel emptiness. And here you simply make a choice. On one hand, there's the alluring voice and the feeling of emptiness that alternate with each other. On the other hand, there's the acceptance of reality and the gradual approach to your own. Certain goals and dreams, no matter how pleasant the voice is, no matter how sweet the words it whispers to you, it will always result in you feeling at rock bottom. This is how the mechanisms of narcissism work. It's never the case that you feel special and on top now and then don't slide down. You will 100% slide down. If you really want to fight narcissism, fight perfectionism, start at least with this. Force yourself to do things imperfectly. Do about 6 out of 10. This principle works for me now. I apply it. I honestly wouldn't have done so much if I were constantly seeking something perfect. The next point, go against devaluation. If, when the moment comes that you want to devalue yourself, please sit down and start writing down gratitudes. Review your photos. Let them evoke pleasant feelings in you. Let this feeling of devaluation pass. You need to extinguish it. You need to start thanking everything. Your finger, the table, the charger, the phone, everything. This genuine feeling of gratitude will drown out all this devaluation. Acknowledge that you are equal among equals. Acknowledge that you may not reach your most cherished dream, but you are ready. To enjoy the process and gradually get closer, taking steps towards it, I have an ideal picture of how I see myself in 5 years. It is quite detailed and thoroughly described in my journals. Between the picture I see, the distance between where I am now and that point is very large, and right now I don't know how to reach it. I acknowledge that maybe I won't reach that point, but I still try not to give up, and for me it's about the journey itself. This feeling that I'm already living, from those thoughts that are there, I am building the same processes as at that point B, just gradually attracting some external objects into my life and slowly moving closer to what I truly want. And of course, start working on handling criticism, self-respect, setting personal boundaries, and the ability to say no. And all of this is done in parallel with a psychologist simultaneously working on narcissism. Work with a psychologist on who you are, with your strengths, learn to appreciate them, develop them. This feeling that I am valuable, I am important, first and foremost to myself, and I always choose myself. And this should be at a confident level. Yeah. As you work on narcissism, you might have the question, how do I distinguish between my true desire and whether I really want this? Am I ready to engage in the process of reaching my goal, to do something, or is it something imposed by society and I'm doing it to make an impression, to show these external attributes? And I asked a psychologist and we discussed the simplest example. For instance, let's say I'm going on vacation to the Maldives. If I were to go there and couldn't take my phone to take pictures, would I still go? If my answer is yes, and I wouldn't be upset, then I'm truly going there for myself. But if I'm going there just to take pictures and show off how great my life is, most likely that's an external desire dictated by society. In one of the videos, I mentioned a phrase like this: do I enjoy acting in theater? Or do I like what people will think of me when I act in theater? So ask yourself this kind of question. The video is simply coming to an end. I finally recorded it. After the 5th attempt, recording for an hour and a half. I don't know how long it will be. In the end, I don't know if it turned out perfectly, but I hope you really liked this video. It was very important to me. The video is one of the most important videos on the channel here. I have summarized the results of working with a psychologist over the past 6 months, and these are the most important conclusions in my life. They have made me resilient, thanks to which I feel good now. Of course, sometimes I have setbacks. Of course, I sometimes slip back, but it happens very rarely. Very rarely do I feel bad. Very rarely. Some video from Instagram, something can throw me off balance. I know that it's very hard to get out of these emotional swings, even if they hurt, because there's something good here. It's like smoking. It kills you, but in the moment it might seem pleasant. It's the same here. That's all from me. Please give a like, leave a comment if you found yourself in some moments from this video. If you have similar examples, if you take something for yourself, please share this video with your loved ones, with your friends, because it is valuable to me. With this, my video is coming to an end. Thank you very much for watching. Give a like, write your comments, and please be mentally healthy people.